just as this Japanese prime minister say that Japan is back. It's not a normal Japanese state is back. He's actually what he say is the Japanese empire is back. We will never allow that things happen. If Japanese prime minister say that Taiwan is part of China and PRC is the only legal representative of China in the world, he say these two sentences, I think Chinese governments maybe will accept her withdrawal and apologize to end up this diplomatic crisis.
A few days ago, Sakanai Takaichi said in the Diet session, like Japan, a basic position on the Taiwan question is, as stated in 1972, join the Munich, and that position hasn't changed. But Beijing doesn't satisfy with his stance, right? And can you help people to like our audience to explain or understand China's position here? Why does our foreign ministry just refuse to accept this kind of the change in Japan's stance?
Because there's no change of Japan's stance. Japan's prime minister made a very clear announcement in Japanese Congress. She said that Japanese had the right so-called collective defense, the first. And the second, he clearly announcement that the reunification of Taiwan, if the so-called use the military force will trigger the so-called Japanese critical surviving of those surviving crisis moment. And then Japanese had the right to use this collective defense and launch the military interventions on that situations. That's unacceptable. So from China's side, we want Japanese Prime Minister make a very clear announcement, including three parts. But first, he said that she should withdraw her terms. He said that including all above mentioned in those Japanese Congress. The second, she should reclaim those one China principles that has been written 4 times in those four Sino-Japanese bilateral relationship diplomatic files. And the third, she must make a very clear announcement, say that what that means. He said that Japan's stance would not change, but Chinese FMPRC said that please speak out. What is that stance? That stance is Taiwan is part of China, and PRC is the only legal representative of China in the world. If Japanese prime minister say that Taiwan is part of China and PRC is the only legal representative of China in the world, he say these two sentences, I think Chinese governments maybe will accept her withdrawal and apologize to end up this diplomatic crisis de facto already existed between these two countries and triggered by those stupid words of Japanese Prime Minister her speak in this Congress. She did want to speak it out because it's not only a verbal, but it's a real actions. It's a legal action or diplomatic action. It will make a very clear announcement, say to speak out Japanese real attitude on these Taiwan issues. It will make nearly mission impossible for any future Japanese prime ministers or any potential politicians from the so-called right wings inside Japanese countries make any blurry or provocative steps in that very sensitive issues. So that's the reason why Japanese side just will not withdraw from this step, because since the end of Second World War, it spent more than 30 or 50 years that Japanese moving to this point. And it means Japanese right-wing politicians inside Japanese countries, they spend about 50 years to do three things. The first, try to providing a political suspicion of the uh, access articles inside the UN chapters, in which they passing through two solutions in the UN Assembly, say that maybe those articles has already out of date, need to be removed. Though those articles did not be removed, but it's sending out wrong signals, make people believe these articles has been suspended. That make Japanese right-wing peoples feel safe and believe they can make one future step. So the second step is try to create an environment in which, even though that Japanese countries did not make real modification of their peaceful constitutions. It means did not remove Article 9 of their constitutions. They can still rebuild their military force de facto, which is violation. There's peaceful constitutions, but they just do it. And the third is Anbei Jingsan, the former Japanese prime minister, spent a long time to set up a law, a domestic law, which allowed Japanese illegally regain its collective defense rights and set up a very blur, weak signals between these rights and the Taiwan issues. He said that in three different situations, Japan had the right to launch these collective defensive actions. The first, Japanese territory has been under attack. And the second, the Japanese take military actions according to the US-Japanese military alignment agreement. And the Japanese self-defense troops were providing assistance to US troops in that region. And the third countries which has close relationships with Japan has got some troubles and Japanese has the right to help him. But namely, Japanese never mentioned that Taiwan is a country because he said that in the paper he respect Taiwan is part of China. It will respect and obey the one China policy or principles. When leave that office as a former Japanese prime minister, Anbei Jingsan speak that famous sentence, 台湾有事,日本有事. When Taiwan have these problems, that will mean the problems of Japan. And make an implication, but not speak publicly that Japan will use those collective defensive power or rights to so-called defense Taiwan. It's providing a very smart cutoff between these two things. You cannot make a legal accuse say that we have the evidence that you Japanese government had those intentions to launch this military intervention to Taiwan issues. And this Japanese prime minister, he speak it out loudly, formally to the world. We all heard it. He say, as a Japanese prime minister say that, yes, this collective defense right will be a kind of legal tools to launch military intervention of the Taiwan issues. That's unacceptable. That's leading to the threat to the core of China's national security interest. So if Japan want to make a withdrawal, he need to withdraw the terms and make a clear announcement, a formal explanations to say Japanese so-called collective defense right will never ever used to intervene these Taiwan issues. That will be a mission impossible for the Japanese right-wing peoples. Just as this Japanese prime minister say that Japan is back, it's not a normal Japanese state is back. He's actually what he say is the Japanese empire is back. We will never allow that things happen. Japanese empire, those military regimes which triggered the Second World War and do those stupid holocausts, horrible, awful Holocaust in that 14 years will never ever be allowed to come back again. We will never allow it to happen again. So that's the reason we will never accept this game of words. We need the formal words and we need the formal promise. We need those not only words but actions. It's not only for China's national interest, but also for the interest of the regional security and stabilities.
Sakaichi's talk is on the table, and there are some less visible but increasingly sharp interaction between China and Japan. Like the PLA has sent aircraft and vessels to conduct exercise around the Taiwan Strait on November the 16th, and China's Coast Guard vessel entered the territory water around the Diaoyu Islands for a rights protection patrol, and they've now stayed there for nearly 20 days. On November the 23rd, the Japanese drone monitoring the Diaoyu Island since April suddenly went out of control while landing. So, how do we interpret these things, and
It
especially in
means
this background?
it means all options are on the desk, are on the tables. Anything is possible if Japanese side just neglect the signals from China's side, just neglect the requirement from China's side. China will take any possible actions. We will take any options in our policy box to make Japanese understand their mistake and to make or to help Japanese to change their behaviors, to recognize the mistake and make proper corrections of their misspeaking and misdoing.